Hi everyone. Today we will present you workplace indoor mapping. We will go through several scenarios. Please note that you will need WSD to have the plugin, and the minimum family release is Rome.
And the purpose of this presentation is to essentially cover the workplace indoor mapping process end to end. We've run into several customer scenarios where some customers are starting with the indoor mapping from scratch, as in they don't have like a workplace reservation system in place. There are other customers who have an active reservation system that they're already using and now want to additionally start using the maps capability for indoor mapping. And there's a scenario where some customers might be using the mapped-in solution to display their maps. So how would each type of customer go about leveraging the workplace indoor mapping capabilities that are available to them? So we plan to cover all these scenarios end to end, including migration across instances, to cover everything and any questions that you might have. So these are the plugins that we need to start off with. So Alex, you made a good point over there that the family release, so Rome onwards, as long as you're on Rome or anything newer, you can leverage the indoor mapping capabilities alongside WSD. A caveat there is if you want to use indoor maps on the Now mobile app, you will need to be on the Tokyo instance and you will need to install the plugin for the mobile capabilities for WSD. WSD version is noted there, and Workplace Service Delivery Suite version is noted there. So, and the Workplace Indoor Mapping version is noted there. But our recommendation is to typically, whenever you're starting the implementation for indoor mapping, it is to update your app, your Workplace Service Delivery Suite, and the Workplace Indoor Mapping plugin to the latest version so that you make the most of the new features that are out there, as well as some of the defect fixes that are already in place. So moving forward to scenario one. So our first scenario is assuming that you are a new WSD customer, or rather you're starting out with like a new WSD campus, and you're creating an indoor map in the in Studio. What do we mean by campuses? So traditionally, a call out there is you might have, if you are an existing WSD customer, you might have used campuses in a different sense than what WSD expects it to be. So from a WSD point of view, a campus is a collection of buildings that are located in close proximity to each other. So you can have multiple buildings like an east wing and a west wing, but they should be in close proximity because they will show up as a campus. It might you might have used a campus as, let's say, like a city in your WSD record in the past. So the buildings might be farther out. But from a WSD, from like an indoor mapping point, campuses are entities that need to, entities is like a collection of building that needs to be in close proximity of each other. And now we'll start off with the scenario where we define a new campus in WSD, and then we define a building inside of that campus, and then we'll go through the process to upload the floor plan for that one. So Alex, I'll let you guide us through that process.
All right, thank you. So to go to Indoor Map Studio, you will have to type Map Studio in the context menu. Then you will end up here, and you can click on Continue. The first thing to do is to locate your campus. So this one that's located in France, it will be like our PS6 building, and the address will be that one. Let's hit continue. Here we'll confirm that this is in the PSX building. Continue. It will be the same name because it's only one building for that one. And now we have the boundaries of our campuses. So we are free to go to campus and buildings to adjust the boundaries if it's not on the right place. Here, let's move them here. Adjust the edges.
And a question that we often get is, for some buildings, the boundary is automatically defined, and for some other buildings, the boundary is not defined. So in that case, we need to manually define it, right? And
yeah, if the address isn't found by the system, so here you won't have the boundaries automatically created. You will have a button to create your own.
Perfect.
So it will be like, so here I can't create new boundaries, but I can add points or remove them, and it will be the same thing to do, let's say.
And another question I see at the bottom, it says open maps. So is there a way that, let's say, we want to use Google Maps or something?
Yeah, if you have your own outdoor style, you are able to import it in the system and use it instead of the default one.
Okay.
It has to be done on at the outdoor style level here.
Okay.
So let's jump to the first import. So the first thing you have to do is to create a floor. So here it will be number 1. Title for 1 and short title 1. If you have any existing WSD data, please make sure that everything is reflecting to this existing one. So here we are creating everything from scratch, so it doesn't really matter. But just for the synchronization point of view, it's always better to have the same campus name that you have in WSD, same building name, and same floor names. And it will be the same for the spaces. In order to have a correct matching, it needs to be the same name on your AutoCAD file and on your WSD configuration.
And,
but this is something that we will cover on another scenario.
So is there a difference between name and title? So I believe title is the one that the end users see, right? And the name is the second one?
Yeah, so the name can be seen as an ID, even if it's not really, but it's like thing that you will see in the system. And the title is what is being displayed. So in the card view, schedule view, or even in the map view. And we have title as well in Map Studio. And I will show you when we will jump to the places. But here, the names in both WSD and indoor mapping need to match.
Perfect.
So here, let's upload our file. So let's choose that one. We'll confirm that we are creating a new source, and we are going for the DWG routes.
And on this one, we can upload a PNG file, I'm aware, and a CAD file. So is there a preference? So
it really depends on what you want to do. If you want to have like an automatic creation, it's always better to, and if you want to automate pretty much everything, you have to go for the DWG or GXF route because you will be able to configure much more than a PNG, because basically you have much more information within a CAD file than a PNG, because a PNG is just an image. And you see the configuration. You have layers and text and everything in CAD that you don't have in a PNG. And it's much more powerful, let's say. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. And prior to uploading the CAD file, there is likely a cleanup step involved where we only have the layers that we absolutely need for indoor mapping to work.
Yeah, you really need to make sure that you will simplify your CAD files. So all the extra details that you don't really want to see in your map, you will need to get rid of. It's always better to have things enclosed, even if in November we have a feature that helps you to enclose your shapes, and a lot of stuff to do that we covered in a video that is available in community, and also in a guideline that you also be able to find in community.
Perfect. So yeah, definitely request you all to look through the video that Alex has created around cat file cleanups, as well as the guide that is out there. Thanks for that.
Yeah, and for like any questions on basically how to do map, community is the place to be.
Perfect. Thanks.
So here, let's click on configure. The first thing you have to do is to edit the georeference, just to position your building in the right position. So here, let's do that. You can click on the pin to adjust.
So
everything.
how does this tie into the building boundaries? So does this need to be within the building boundary that we defined previously?
So yeah, it's better that this would be in the boundaries just for display purposes, because by default, if you don't play with the zoom level and the views, it will center at the boundaries. I mean, in the boundaries. So yeah, it's always better that it stay within the boundaries. So here, when you import a floor, as I showed you, you can adjust everything, and once you think you're done, you'd be able to click on save. But you also have the option to click on display. And if, for example, you had another floor, you will be able to click here, display it, and adjust your other floor to make sure that they will fit and everything will remain at the same position. It's useful for elevators, because that way you're sure that it will remain there, for example, and that your elevators aren't there if you switch from one floor to another. So you can display everything here, and you can play with the opacity of the floor plan you are importing as well.
Okay, that makes sense. So essentially to stack one floor over the other.
Yeah. Yep. So here, let's save because it looks good to me. And now we will configure the layers. So the layers are all the shapes that you have in your CAD files. And it's always better to separate them and give them a clear name in order to be able to give them a layer type. And a layer type is basically a color, and it will help shapes to be displayed in the right order that are configured by default under layer type. So we have here default types that we will use in this demo, but you're always free to add more under layer types. I don't know if it makes sense. Tell me if it's not, but here we want to import every layers, and then we will give them a layer type. So it's pretty much straightforward since my naming is pretty good. So for the building outlines, we will select building. Desks, it will be furnitures. Inaccessible is inaccessible. Room is room. And terrace will be vegetation. And you also have the option to click on layer preview, just to make sure that you are editing the right one.
Sense. And so essentially, while this has to be done while doing the CAD file cleanup, right? Breaking down each entity outline into its own layer so that this step becomes straightforward. Yeah,
renaming your layers and separating them is not something that you can do in the studio. So yeah, everything has to be done in AutoCAD first.
And what does inaccessible mean? So I believe it's something like a server room or like a janitor's closet or something, right?
Yeah, every let's say areas that you can't walk or you can have access to, to me, it's inaccessible. So it will be a different colors on the map, and I will show you right after when the floor is imported. But you will see like here inaccessible is a dark gray, rooms light gray, the building, so building outlines. Here we will have all the corridors that will be defined thanks to the room outlines. You will see the end result right after. But you have different colors depending on the layer type, and it will be more clear once the first floor is imported.
And in the building outline, would you recommend doing the outer wall or the inner wall?
Just building outlines to me needs to be like the outer wall of the building, and then you can have all the inner walls on the same layer here on the room outlines.
Got it.
So let's jump to the text. So the text are all the text objects that you have in your CAD file, and they will become a point of interest. So a point of interest can either be a point or a polygon, and I will show you the difference right after. And here I will show you how to configure them. So we want to have everything here in order to have the right naming. We will click on the two arrows here. We'll select text, and we will copy and paste text on all of our title templates. Text is basically what is displayed in your CAD file, and you will have the same naming convention that you had in your CAD file in the studio. Here we will select a polygon. So if you leave it as create place as a point, it will be a point, and I will show you right after what it is. And if you select a layer, it will create a polygon. So here, a break room, I know that this is an enclosed space, and this is a room. So I will use my previous room outline layer, and I will select my place type to be information/misc. And if I hit preview, I can see that here I have my text object within an enclosed area, and it will create a polygon because this is enclosed, and you will see that the area is covered by an icon and a color.
So if you can open the text preview again. So just one question. So the text, the starting point of that text box, if it's in a polygon specified by the layer that we chose, then it, thinks that that text is pointing to the polygon that encloses it. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And what happens if, let's say, there is like some stray text that is not enclosed by a polygon or like in the open white space or something? So it's not enclosed by the layer that we selected. So will it throw an error, or what does happen then?
No, even though you selected a layer to use, if it's not enclosed, like for example, let's say my rec room is here, and I see that it's not in an enclosed area, by default it will create a point. Even if you wanted to have it as a polygon, you really need to make sure that it is inside an enclosed area in order to have polygons.
So we won't lose data. Worst case, instead of like being like a box, it will just be a dot on the thing.
Yeah, and this is the same thing that, for example, let's say that here I had multiple different text objects within the same area. It will create multiple points of interest on top of each other.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
So let's configure the desk. So pretty much straightforward thanks to the naming. So desk name and desk outlines. Here I'll go for desks. Emergency, I know because I know the floor plan that they are within corridors. So I will leave them as points. So I will select fire extinguisher because they are mostly fire extinguishers. And if I click on preview here, I don't have my room outlines anymore because I haven't selected anything, and I only have points. And you will see the end result right after. Meeting room names, still a room. Select meeting room, office, room, office. And you really need, so depending on how many types you want to have after the imports, you really need to separate your text on different layers. Otherwise, they will have the same place type, which is basically an icon and a color. And you will have to do the matching by yourself manually after the imports. So to save some time, it's always better to separate everything before importing into the studio.
And can we define our own place types as well? So let's say I
Yeah.
want, yeah.
So it's pretty much the same then for the layer types. So here we have a default catalog, but if you look at place types on the menu, you see that we have indoor map place types. So this is a table where you'll be able to add new records, new icons, new colors, and everything. But yeah, you can definitely use your own there.
And I believe there is a blog on place types, dedicated blog on place types as well.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. We have a blog, an article on our community websites. So yeah. So once we are done, we can click on Start Imports. Then it will process the map, and we will be able to see how beautiful it is.
How long does this usually take?
It really depends on the complexity of your map.
Okay.
So the larger your map is, and the more complex it is, let's say, it can take, let's say, up to 10 minutes. But here for a small floor plan, it's pretty much, I mean, it's pretty fast.
Okay, makes sense.
So now it has been imported, it succeeded. So we can go back to the overview and have a look at our map. If we select the building, we can see that everything has been digitalized, and we can see different icons and colors. So here you can see this purple area, which is the restrooms. This color is given by the place types. So this is a polygon because we have a background color and we have an icon here. And here, if we have a look at the fire extinguisher, this is only an icon, and I will show you how to move them, edit them, or even rename them under place types. But here you have the, let's say, the end result before modifying everything in here. And as you can see, we have our inaccessible areas, which here is a void, technical rooms, and so on. So let's now move to places, and this is where you can add more or even edit your point of interest. If you click on new points, you'll be able to select a location and create a point. So here it will be only an icon and a title. So we have the name as we mentioned. So let's say it's a coffee point. The title will be the same. We can save, and here we have our lovely icon. But if we wanted to create a polygon instead, that's a thing we can do by clicking on your polygon. We will have to define the corners of our polygon. So here, let's make it, I don't know, another break room, but outside. Let's select the same icon, save it. And here we have our second break room. But if you wanted to edit a point of interest, you can click on it, click on edit, and then we can add more points, for example, to change the shape of the building. So we can have this weird restroom. And as you can see, it changed. And everything will reflect to your to the location directory or reservation if you edit something.
I see that place a marker, place an entrance while you select that place. So what do those mean?
So you can change by adding a marker. You can change where the icon would be located. So if we want to have the icon here, we can totally do it, and we can get rid of it by double clicking. And we can also add an entrance. And the entrances are meant to work with the direction that I will show you right after. And you will just specify that the entry point is here, because by default, when you create direction, I'm spoiling the next part, but that's fine. It will go to the icon. So for example, if you have one, let's say path here that you created under direction, it will make the connection and go through the icon. And if you want to avoid that and be more precise, you can add the entrance.
Okay, so that makes sense. So if there's like two paths going around the room and there's only one door, you can tell ServiceNow where the door is, so that it only makes you enter from that side and not the back of the room where there's no door.
Yeah.
And making that marker disappear, like, will the text still show up or will nothing show up?
Yeah, so if you add a marker, the text and the icon will move with it. It will like pretty much replace like the icon that you're seeing there. And if you get rid of it, like I just did, it will just go back to the original position it was.
Okay. And we can change the icons in the place type table as well, right? So if we wanted to use our own icons that we've designed.
Yeah, you will see it in the, so if I get rid of the text, so here we have the full default list, but if you add your own, it will be displayed there and you'll be able to select it here. And it would be the same in the configuration of your CAD file. So you select an icon, and if you have your own there, you can change it. Any other questions on places?
No, thanks. This was super helpful.
No problem. Let's move to directions. So directions, you will need to configure them if you want to use the location directory. And you will, by doing that, you will specify where you can walk in your building. So you will create some routes here. Let's create one. Let's go there. I can right click to exit. Let's adjust to be more precise. And you don't need to connect each point of interest to the line. By default, it will use the nearest line to connect to when you want to search for some, to go from point A to point B. So here we can continue a bit. If I click back on draw.
And I see some good options there, which says whether the path is accessible or not accessible, or whether it's like a one-way path or two-way.
Yeah. So if you click on a line, you can give different options. You can give penalty, time penalty, let's say. So if you know that one way is faster than another, you can add like, I don't know, 10 seconds to that one. So that way it will use the shortcut instead of using that one.
Okay.
You can make them one way, as you mentioned, and you can switch the direction.
Makes sense.
And we have by default, two modes. So we have the default one and the accessible one for people with disabilities. And you can add more as well. So I don't know, if you want a bike in your building, you're free to create a new mode, and you'll be able to activate it here.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that ties into, another use case that I was thinking of in my head as to, can I use this on a parking lot? So likely yes, right? And that's where these things might be more useful, these one-way things, one-way paths.
Yeah. And that's also where you will need to create a new mode. Just to make sure that, you are giving some let's say informations when you create a mode, and using a car is much more faster than walking. So you'll be able to select like a default amount of time it takes to cover a certain distance.
That makes sense. And the modes, is there a table or module you can point to?
Yeah, that's the same for then place types and layout types. You have direction modes.
Okay, straightforward enough. Thanks.
Yeah. And we also have the possibility to create connectors. Sorry. So I don't know why it skipped. trying to go there, but come on. Okay, my instance is stubborn. But here, if you, so let's say that my stair is there, and I don't know why my instance doesn't want to cooperate, but that's fine. So here I know that this is a stair. So if I click on the nodes, I can click on attach a connector, create a new one, and if it's stairs 1, give it a type, so stairs. I know that it won't be accessible. Now I save. And here I have one connector created. And thanks to that, I will be able to link this floor to another one. Okay. So I will reuse the same connector on the upper floor, or just to make sure that they are connected. And so things have been enhanced in November. If you click, I think it's here, you can display the connector links. So by doing that, you know where your connectors are located while looking at a floor. So for example, if I had my second floor, I would see that my stairs were located, could be located there. And I know that I would try to make them be at the same place.
That makes sense. So essentially, if you have like one elevator or like one set of elevators, I use the same elevator one or whatever else I call it.
Yeah, that's something I would recommend. So for example, I know that here on this building, I have 2 elevators here and here.
Mm-hmm.
And just to save some time, because we don't really care which connector we will use, I mean, which elevator we will use, I'm only creating one here.
So that is a good question. If there's like 2 elevators next to each other, we don't create 2 points, right? Like elevator 1 and elevator 2, like one should suffice from like a direction.
So you can do it. I mean, if you want to be like really precise, but if not, you can just create one.
Okay, makes sense.
So here I can create the elevator 1. The type would be elevator. It is accessible, and I say, and here I have my elevator.
That makes sense. And I missed it earlier. So we can change the colors. So let's say if I want to change the color for like one room to draw more attention to it, do I have to go to the place type table and change the default value for that place type, or can I do it at like a floor by floor or like a building by building level as well in Studio?
So in Studio, you can do it at the campus level.
Okay. Perfect.
And so a quick tip, let's say, if you know that you have like a color coding or a default theme you want to have for all of your building across all campuses, something that I would do is to change the values of the layer types, just to make sure that when I will create a new floor, I will have the same color for everything. Otherwise, that's something that you would be able to do in GeoEditor, which is the next steps that we are going to go.
Okay, that makes sense.
And so here we are done with the setup of our building. I will save my directions, and I can jump to View Editor. And please note that View Editor is a mandatory step to go to in order to have your map being displayed in either location directory or reservation. So here, if I click on defaults, I'll be able to select which content I want to have. So I can go for all contents, and all content is like all my layer types, all my place types, or specific content that I will be able to select, or no contents. Here, let's go for specific contents. I will select all of my floors because and my building because I want to have everything. Same for the layers. I want to have everything from the places, connectors, direction mode, and now I can save. And this is where I can change like the default entering zoom of my building. So let's say I want to make it that 20. I can change where it will center by clicking here, as well as the default bearing. So here, I know this is like that, and the default pitch. And when I will enter in my building, it will be always in the same position. And it will be across all the floors.
A question there. So some of the text disappear at like a certain level of zoom, and
yeah,
some text show up. So do you want to talk a little
yeah.
about?
So that's because we have a anti-collision system, just to avoid having too much information. And when we look at the map, so if you zoom out, you will see less point of interest. And if you zoom in, because it's much more precise, you can see them all most of the time, depending of the size of the building and the complexity. But you still have the option to search for them. So that's something I will show you right after I'm under preview. But here we can switch at the layers. So as you can see, all my corridors are white. And if I want them red, for example, I can click on the fill color and change the values. And as you can see, it's changing. And by changing it here, it will reflect to all my buildings within a campus.
And so these layers are different from place types, right? Or are these layers?
Yeah.
Okay.
They are the layer types, and by default, all the place types are on top of the layer types.
Okay.
So, for example, if I click on rooms, since most of the rooms are covered by a place type, I won't be able to see all the changes.
Okay.
So here, if I click on the fill color and make it blue, as you can see, some rooms are changing. But if I go to my places and I take a look at the offices, I change the fill opacity. As you can see, underneath it's blue. It's just that since this is a polygon, every polygon has a color, and the color by default is on top of the layer types, so it's hiding the colors that you are changing under layer types.
Okay, so these layers, a combination of AutoCAD layers as well as place types, can be used to highlight and change how you want to look at the map visually.
Yeah. Same goes for here. So I can change the colors as well for the place types. So let's select the meeting room, for example. If I want to have them yellow, that's something I can do. Can play with the opacity. So here it will be green because it's blue and yellow. You can change the stroke opacity, the stroke width. As you can see, it's bigger. And this is where I pretty much play around with my map and let my creativity be free.
Yeah, that makes sense. And do we have to do this for all floors, or once we've done it for one floor, it carries out throughout the campus?
So if you change something here and you have several floors and building within your campus, it will be applied to everything.
Okay, that makes sense. And but aren't layers unique to like one CAD file, one floor? So if the layer names are same, then it applies or something?
So it depends on which layer type you're added to your layer. By default, in August we had or I think no, it was in November. My bad. But in November we added, if I go back to the floors and floor plans, a feature where if you create another floor, it will use the previous configuration as long as your layer names are the same. So here, if I upload the second floor, I will still have the building outlines because I have that on CAD file. I mean, I have that layer. So layer types will be pre-filled by default.
Okay, so that makes sense. So if I'm uploading multiple floors for the same buildings, it's better for
Yeah.
me to have the same layer names so that
Yeah.
these all configurations carry over.
And this is something that you won't have to reconfigure, so it saves you a lot of time. We can also change the connectors and direction mode here, but playing around with places and layer types are the biggest part, let's say. So once my view is done, I can click on Save this view. And now I can preview my map and test out everything. So here, I can try and go from the break room to the restrooms. And as you can see, I can play around with the directions and try everything here. So here, you can see that my direction is a bit off. So I can go back to the directions. The system thinks that this is closer than this point, so I can like just adjust like this. Save. If I go back on the preview, click on the building. If I go back and search right room to the restrooms, now you can see that my direction has been corrected. And this is how you create your maps in the mapping. Any questions?
No, I think I'm good. So these still won't show up on my reservation portal or anything. There is still more work to be done, right?
Yeah. So this is the first step. Then you will have to link your data with WSD. So in order to do that, let's jump right to it.
And on that note, the reason why it's structured this way is indoor mapping is its own product.
Yeah.
And then there are other applications that use the indoor mapping. So for example, the location directory uses indoor mapping. The workplace reservation page uses indoor mapping, and space planning is the newest application now to use indoor mapping. So indoor mapping in these maps in itself. So this is us defining the core part of the maps, and then they will have applications down the line. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Perfect. Essentially, in this use case, we don't have any WSD data, right? We'll be creating WSD data through maps as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything is we will go from scratch basically for the building.
Okay, got it. And I think we can skip the creation of region and site since they already exist, but these are the two WSD records that need to be created, right? And now we'll likely create the campus on the existing site regions.
Yeah, you will have to create your region, then your site, and then your campus. Okay. Yeah. So here, let's go with the campus in WSD. So it's PS6 building. I'm giving them the same name. It's in Europe, and site Western Europe. So the time zone Paris, and my campus PS6 building.
Do these two names have to match for the campus or not really?
It doesn't really matter, but it is always better to have the same data in both positions and the same naming convention, just to make sure that that everything is the same thing, basically.
And I see that the view that you're on is the workplace indoor mapping campus view.
Yeah. Yeah, since I had indoor mapping on the same time as WSD. I didn't have any other. I mean, this is the default view when you are starting from scratch. I mean, it will be indoor mapping by default. But yeah, if you had previous data, you will have to look for something else. But I will show you right after.
Makes sense.
When we'll go for the next scenario. So here I can click on import. As you can see, I don't have anything, but my two campuses are bound to each others. So I'll be able to click on get buildings and it will populate the records for the building, floors, and spaces. Because the data is living at two different positions. So we have the WSD one and the indoor mapping one, because as we said, indoor mapping was being designed as a standalone. So it has its own records and tables. And that's why we need to link WSD and indoor mapping in order to use it on a reservation, for example.
That makes sense.
So here, oh, go ahead, sorry.
No. So, and do we want to add those two columns, those 2 or 3 columns to the related list to point out what you means, the indoor mapping building column and the external ID and the source column on the related?
So here for this scenario, we just need to be under indoor mapping and make sure that our default provider is indoor mapping. I will show you after that. Next thing we need to configure before jumping to the portal. But here we will still stay here for a bit,
Okay.
because we have our campus being created and the two set of data has been linked to each other's, but we will need to make things resolvable. So here my campus is active, but I will need to make my building resolvable. So I just jump to the building record. It is resolvable, updates, and then I can jump to the floor, switching it here. So it's resolvable, and as well as some spaces. So let's open it on the new window, and let's look at the space type, just to make all my workspaces as resolvable. So
And
show
the
matching.
space type is populated through like a mapping table, right? Between place type and space type. While
Yeah, I will show you. So let me switch them to is resolvable. Okay, that's good. And now if we go to place types, we have the place type mapping. And here you have the full list of which indoor map place type ties to which space type. So we have more place types than space types, but here you will be able to change everything to add your own. And that's the same if you create custom place type, you will need to create a new interaction between the two of them.
And call out there that if you have multiple domains in your instance, then you might have to recreate these records in the same domain as your other records, your location records.
Yeah. Yeah, place types and space types need to be under the same domain. So now we have our WSD campus set. So we will need to take a look at the map properties. And here, since we had mapping before, we need to switch to indoor mapping. Otherwise, you won't be able to load the indoor mapping maps under reservation. So here, let's save. And we also need to make sure that under the resolvable module, that the map view is enabled for our spaces. So here, if we look at desks, if we look at resolvable views, we can see that the map view is enabled. It's not the default view, but it's there. And thanks to that, you'll be able to see the map on the portal. So we'll be able to jump right next to the portal. Any question before we go there?
No, this is good. Thanks.
And setting the mapping technology is really only if you were using a different one beforehand, and now you're switching to indoor mapping, right?
But by default, it will be empty. So if we go back to the map properties, and if I did the record, so by default, it will be known. but you will need to select indoor mapping in order to use it.
Okay.
So this is also a mandatory step you shouldn't skip before trying to test your map. And if we now go to new reservation, it will bring us to the reservable module, the reservation, and we will be able to select our campus. So here, PSX building, it's search. So we have the card view, and if we click on the map view, here, it's loading the map. So as you can see, all my workspaces are green, and that's also something that you can change under the map properties. You can change the color that you will use. So please note that this is either an hexadecimal color that you can use here or a CSS color, and you can also add transparency or change the opacity of your color before seeing them here. So let's say under this office, underneath you have a lot of desks and furniture that are displayed. If you want to be able to see them, you will need to change the color and add transparency to your CSS color.
Makes sense. And could you show how we could use directions in map view? If I were
yeah, in reservation, you won't be able to use it. So you will have to switch from the reservation to the location directory. So here, if I select my campus and I click on view map, it will be pretty much the same as we experienced using the preview. Here we can select the break room again, get direction to location, and go to the restroom. So here, as you can see, it's highlight where you're going, and where you're coming from. And you can also switch, and you have an estimated amount of time as well as the distance. You can also switch your mode here.
So, and once we've carried out these steps, then that's all we need to do, right? To start using it in WSD and location directly. Perfect. And the changes that, let's say if we make changes to the room outlines or anything else in Indoor Mapping Studio, do they get carried back over to the CAD files? Likely not, right?
No, they don't.
Perfect.
And same, if you edit a layer type and the view, layer type or place type, and the view has been configured, you will need to go back to the view and add them as well. Or add the changes or reset to your view. It depends on what you added. For example, here, our view is stats. So we have one building and one floor. If we wanted to have under the same campus, another floor or another building, we will need to go back there, add the specific content that we want to have. So let me show you real quick. If we go back to Map Studio, our building view, I will need to click here, reset my view, and select the specific content again. So here I will see more. By default, the second floor won't be ticked, so you will just have to click, continue, and you're done.
Okay, so when I add like a new floor CAD file, I need to edit the view to select that floor.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, so that's why I do recommend to create the view when you're sure that everything was imported. But this is useful to know because sometimes, in the future, you can have a new floor being created or a new building being created near the first one or built. A bit more sense, but yeah, as long as new things are coming to the studio, you will need to add them to the view if they weren't there before.
That makes sense. And there is, let's say if I add like a new space in an existing floor plan, do I need to go and click on get buildings explicitly, or will it be automatically synced? And I know the answer to that, so I'll cover it myself. So out of the box, there are business rules that whenever a campus is synced to a WSD campus, it automatically creates those new records. There is an open PRP around it right now, which may cause duplicates, but the expected behavior is that it will automatically create your new whatever new entities that you create within a campus linked to WSD. Those changes will be reflected automatically without any manual action needed.
And on that note, something that can be useful for you to know, when you re-import floor plan, if you change, for example, let's say that here we don't have a meeting room anymore, and this is a restroom. If you edit the text in CAD and re-import it, it will be automatically changed here and in WSD. If you create, if you delete the text object in CAD and you create a new one, it will so set the previous one as inactive, and it will create a new record for the new one you just added.
Okay, got it. So it never deletes records, it just sets it to inactive, and
Yeah,
it just okay.
And that's the same when, so if you delete the campus records, the indoor mapping campus records, all your data in WSD will remain, but everything will be inactive.
Okay, that makes sense. And yeah, I have no other questions. So I think we can move on to the next scenario, Alex. So scenario 2A is where you already have an existing workplace reservation management system in place. So you have already configured WSD and you are using it to make reservations right now. You just aren't using indoor mapping. Now you want to add the indoor mapping capability to your existing WSD implementation. And scenario 2B is a minor deviation of scenario 2. So 2B is where you have the WSD implementation and you are using the mapped in solution for displaying your indoor maps. And now you want to move over to indoor map solution. So yeah, Alex, I'll let you take it over once again.
All right, so here we are at the campus level. The first thing we want to do is to check for the source, because this data was created before having the indoor mapping plugin. So if we take a look at the source of the record, we can see that here we don't have any source. So we will need to double click and change it to indoor mapping.
And just to make sure, so this is the WSD campus record that
Yeah.
was already existing and being used as a part of the workplace reservation experience, right?
Yeah. So here we took a look at the source. We can enter in the records. We will do the same for the buildings. So here, as you can see, we have some previous mapped in data. So we need to change here. And Gaurav, correct me if I'm wrong, but we might also need to take a look at the external ID and
indoor building. So yeah, so if you had mapped in, you would see the source as mapped in. If you had nothing at all, you'll see the source as empty. In both cases, you'll have to change the source to indoor mapping and ensure that the external ID field is empty. So external ID field, previously it did have value for mapped in, but when we change the source value to indoor mapping, it gets cleared out. So the only step that you need to do is ensure that the source is now changed to indoor mapping.
We also might want to add the created on field in the column view. This is a good testing step because if it doesn't find an exact match, it will create another record. which may be duplicate if it was not intended to do so. So by adding that column, you can see if there were any records that were created at the time your floor plan was loaded, then it's an indication that you might have a duplicate to go check out.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Hopefully, and on the topic of duplicates, so as Alex previously mentioned that it is the name field that is mapped one-to-one. So if you had like a building -A in indoor maps and you had building space A in WSD, then it will it will treat it as a different building and it will create another record. So definitely worth checking the created on how many new records got created as a part of the scripts, because if the name match doesn't work, then it will go on to create a new record.
Yeah, let's now take a look at the floors as well. So we will add the source, the indoor floor, as well as the external ID. We don't need to create it now, I think. So, whoops.
No, I think let's add the created in all cases anyway. You know, doesn't hurt to triple check. So yeah, as you see over here, the external ID is mapped in, but if you change the source to indoor mapping, yeah, or
yeah, let's just remove it just in case. Let's change it here as well. So here we are good to go for the floors, and let's do it again for spaces.
and we do realize that this step is might be time consuming and not entirely automatic. So you can write a script or something as well, but especially if you're coming from mapped in, this step is definitely needed, because if it already has a mapped in record and if it has an external ID, even if the space name is the same, it will completely ignore it and create a new one. So you'll want to ensure that the external ID is empty and the source is indoor mapping, which essentially tells ServiceNow that, hey, you're good to override this record.
Let's refresh. Yeah, we don't have the external ID as you mentioned. And here, let's do that as well for all our spaces. So here, let's look for the source. All right, now let's just go back here. All good. And now we can add the indoor map campus. So here, little campus.
Did
we
you
already have a time?
And I believe we already created an indoor mapping campus, right? With
yeah, my bad. I forgot to show you, but yeah, here we have the little campus. So we have the building A and building B, as well as two floors, floor one for building B and floor one for building A. But yeah, we have our data here, and they are the one that we are going to match with the existing ones.
And you bring up a good point over here as to how buildings are to be used in the campus. So the outer boundary is the campus boundary, and the inner things are the buildings. So essentially, buildings, as we talked about at the start of the session, campuses are groups of buildings in close proximity of each other. Speaking from an indoor mapping point.
And so here we have
and
the
building names, floor names, and space names need to be the same, right?
Yeah. So here, as you can see, we have building A, building B. Same here. Floors, we have two floor one for building A, one for building B. And if we take a look at the floors and floor plans and the configuration, we have floor one floor 1. And the spaces, most of them are matching. We might have some new one because the floor plan has been updated not a while ago, so it might create new spaces and match other one to each other's.
And a call out here is, even if you have records in the room table, the room table extends the space table. So for all intents and purposes for this one, it is a space record. So that should not be a problem.
Yeah. So here, if we go back to the campus record, we can click on Get Buildings. So we need to make sure that we are in the Workplace Indoor Mapping campus view, and the source. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, and one thing that Alex did in the previously is he changed the source at the campus level to indoor mapping, and then assigned the little campus to the indoor mapping campus. Only then will you see the indoor map, the Get Buildings button, because we've had, some customers know that they don't see the Get Buildings button, and that source field and value populated in the indoor map field are the two main causes for that.
So here, since we have everything, we can Get Buildings, and it can take some times, and you will see that the indoor map building will be filled. Let's refresh. And here, as you can see, we have now an external ID the two buildings been matched to each other's. If we take a look at the floors, they're the same, and the spaces, some were created and some were matched. So as you can see, if we don't have any indoor map place here, we have a duplicates. So we might have two different names. So as Gaurav said, if you have a space, or it's space and case sensitive, so we might have a space after this record, and that's why it created a new one. And same for the other one. So this one is an old one and might not be there anymore, as well as some others. And that's why we end up with a bit more spaces than we had before.
And the new spaces that are created, they are not reservable. So even if those spaces are created, we won't start seeing them directly on WSD. So we'll have to do that previous step to, check this reservable. So yeah, this can be like a good, thing to find out. Along with the created thing, you can use the is reservable thing to identify the new things that were created. So fire extinguisher, it doesn't need to be reservable. So we can leave it as is. And at the same time, there is some reconciliation activity that is typically expected, just to make sure that the data that is created is as expected. But yeah, the overall steps remain the same, but there's just some data validation that is needed.
Maybe we can try and move one of our campus to another instance.
Yeah, let's do that.
So you will need to note that we have an article on community that cover how to migrate from one instance to another, as well as one UI action that you will need to import as an update set in your instance in order to allow the UI action to be there.
And
so
on that one. So yeah, I will link that UI action along with this video. So you need to install that UI action. But what that UI action does is it essentially extracts the data from all the multiple tables that indoor map uses. And then we essentially extract that XML and import that XML in the new instance. So there's two UI actions, in fact. So we can choose to export just the indoor mapping data, or we can choose to export and in fact the WSD data related to it as well. So if and all that works at a campus level. So for example, now that we've linked the WSD campus to the indoor mapping campus, we can either in the target instance, we can just, we can do it two ways. So we can just move the indoor mapping data from one instance to another. And in the target instance, we can choose to run the get buildings job once again, carry out that data reconciliation and have the data created as is. But if there was like a lot of data cleanup that was done already in the new in the development environment, then you can alternatively also export the WSD data starting at the campus level as XML as well, and just re-import it. So that way you won't have to do the cleanup, data cleanup, if anything, in the new instance as well. So that's there. So yeah, Alex, I'll let you.
Yeah, so if we go to indoor mapping campuses, if we select the PSX building, for example, and we click on export campuses, it will export everything as an XML. Then we can go to the target instance. Then we will look for retrieve update sets and import our XML.
Yeah, and if we look at the indoor mapping campuses now, if you search the studio, if you go open studio in here, that data should be there.
Yeah. And you will need to know that in order to have it working, you need indoor mapping on the target instance.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So the plugins that we talked about previously need to be there. So now through this step, we've only brought in the indoor mapping data. We can choose to bring in the WSD data as well. So do we want to do the export WSD?
Yeah. So if we go back here, we can export the related WSD objects. And we will need to go back to the update sets.
Yeah.
Let's go back to retrieve.
Yeah, it's not really an update set we can retrieve anywhere, but yeah, this.
Yeah.
The only update set is that UI action, but yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, that's something. So that's somewhere I'm going when I need to import an XML like everywhere, just to make sure that it will go somewhere. So if we go to campuses now, we now have our building.
And as you see over here, a good call out there is the region and site fields. They're empty because it started importing campus down. So region and site need to be there. So what we can do right now is, you can XML. We won't do it right now, but you can XML the region and site tables. You'll have to do it explicitly if they don't exist. But if you do a show XML, you'll still see, the SysID for region and site that was brought over from the previous instance. So this was the end-to-end flow for starting from scratch for loading an indoor mapping CAD file and then linking it to WSD and then promoting it across instances, at the same time doing it under different scenarios that you might have, either starting fresh or starting with WSD first and then loading these maps after, or even switching to indoor maps from Mapin. So we have a couple of articles and resources that we referenced during this call. So we'll make sure to note down links to all of those resources along with this videos to make sure that you have all the resources that you need to successfully implement indoor mapping. And yeah, I think we pretty much covered everything. Carolyne, Alex, is there any closing notes or anything that you would want to cover?
The only thing I would say is just make sure that you're working with your account teams, making sure that you're up to date on all of the plugins, because it is a fairly new product. We're constantly releasing new enhancements and fixes quarterly. So just make sure that you're up to date. And if you run into any issues, as always, log a high ticket and work with your account teams if you're running into any issues.
An excellent point there, Carolyne. A common question that we've had is, how are these updates related to family releases. And that goes to the first slide that we had. So they're not, as long as you're on Rome or above, you can still just selectively update the workplace service delivery application and the indoor mapping application to get the latest and greatest. There are some specific dependencies that have been called out. For example, you need to be on Tokyo for using indoor maps on mobile. But outside of it, Rome and onwards, you should be able to directly update your plugin and get the newest features. Thanks.
Thank you, guys, and thank you everyone for watching this video.
Thank you.
Thank you.